Nothing screams spicy revenge like chili down the trousers. We'll get into that story in just a bit, but first, she wanted credit for my work, so I gave it to her. There's this coworker in my department who's notorious for swooping in last minute and polishing up projects just before deadlines, and then taking all the credit when presenting them to leadership. It happened to me one too many times. I did the bulk of a project: research, design, data analysis, the works. She added a few bullet points to the summary slide and slapped her name on the email to the execs. So for the next big assessment, I let her do it again. I sent her my unfinished draft, saying I was running behind and needed help. She jumped at the chance. I completely stepped back and gave her all the credit and even encouraged it, except I knew the data was flawed. On purpose. Nothing crazy, just off enough to collapse under real scrutiny. She presented it with pride at the all hands. The department head asked one question she couldn't answer, then pulled up the source data and the loopholes became obvious. She stumbled, flustered, ended the meeting early saying she'd circle back later that week. I was asked to quietly step in and fix the report. No more stolen credit since then. She still avoids eye contact. If this is your MO, if you get off on riding the coattails of other people's success, you've got to be willing to put yourself at risk for the potential ramifications. So good revenge story. Gusto Maximus replied, had similar-ish. 3 of us did a project and smashed it. We were company heroes and mentioned in a bunch of stuff. A while later, company asked 2 of us to run similar project again. 3rd guy had left. When it was discussed, a bunch of lazy but want credit types asked to join the project. There was about 7 people involved once these people joined in. Original guy and myself knew we'd do all the work and they would go for the credit. So, first kickoff meeting, we said to the CEO, there are more than needed headcount involved now, and we're super busy on other projects. Can these fabulous 5 run the project, and we'll be here if they have support needs or questions? Permission granted. This was about a 9-month project. 6 months after the kickoff, the CEO calls the Fab 5 into his office for a status meeting. All they had done was one initial email 6 months ago saying this person would be responsible for this and that, then nada. And I kid you not, they brought in the printout of this email to present to the CEO of what had been done. Gits would have been better off apologizing. They were swamped and done nothing. Or delayed meet and rushed some work through. But lazy going to lazy. Anyway, we heard a bunch of yelling and swearing come out of the CEO's office from literally the other side of a high-rise office building. Then my name and the other guy's name yelled at the top of the CEO's voice saying, "You two, get in my office now!" Then, with these guys still sitting in his office, he gave us the rundown about what a bunch of useless pricks they had been, and we had to make this project ours and happen ASAP. It kinda sucked as we had to do a 9-month project in 6 months' time, but totally worth it. Also, hey everybody, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these ProRevenge videos, it would be so nice, so awesome if you like the video and, maybe comment it down below if you're listening to our podcast as well. Now then, our next story is deplaning. So it was time to deplane after a long flight. There was a big Singaporean guy who had been loud and demanding all flight. Then he starts pushing to get his bag an inch ahead. When the line starts moving, he starts barging forward, never letting other people join the line from their seats. His tiny wife, stuck close up to his back, was just getting sucked along in his draft. They also had a big dopey teenage son, who was third, but I just jumped in the gap ahead of them with my carry-on. Then as the line moves forward, I keep letting people from seats enter ahead of me. After a while, the son is about 10 meters behind the parents, with lots of people between. Eventually, the dad looks around and notices. Then he yells out, "Richard, what are you doing? Just push through." Yep, sounds about right. There's always that one person, sometimes more, that is on the plane that just has to fly to the closed gate before anybody else. Mother Goose, 1957, replied, "Beats the heck out of me why people do this. There are no prizes for being first off the plane, and they'll just have to wait at the baggage carousel anyway, so no time saved." Awkward Chain 7839 replied, "I tend to get up, but stand in where my seat is. I'm not a good flyer, think quiet terror, and I often need to stretch my legs by standing, so they'll actually work properly after sitting tensely for such a long time. This varies depending on the flight. I actually relax slightly in the middle of a transatlantic flight. It's like my body forgets I'm in a tin can, speeding through the air. That said, I don't care how long it takes to get off, as long as I'm back on the ground. Our next story is, I stole from a shopping cart. So this happened a few days ago at a grocery store. I was waiting patiently in my lane, and beside me was the priority lane for senior citizens, PDs, etc. There were a couple of elderly people sitting on the chairs provided specifically for them while waiting for their turn. Pretty normal setup. Now, some guy casually walks up and cuts right in front of the seated seniors. I speak up and say, hey, they're already in line. And this guy, without even looking at me, goes, I don't see them standing in line though. Real smug. Real dismissive. The elderly folks looked uncomfortable but didn't want to cause a scene. So I shut up, and I simmered. A few minutes later, we're still in the lanes, and I notice his cart is stacked with what looks like camping gear, such as a sleeping bag, paper plates, marshmallows, instant noodles, a portable stove, etc. And there it was, a single can of butane gas. And right there, I saw an opportunity. The guy's blabbering on the phone, totally distracted, so I casually leaned over, plucked the butane from his cart, and slid it into mine. He didn't notice. He checked out and left. I paid for my stuff, including his butane, and walked away. Somewhere out there, this man arrived at his campsite, probably boasting about how smart and quick he is, and when he tried to fire up a portable stove, no gas, no hot food, no coffee, just crunchy noodles and the sweet taste of consequences, hopefully. Edit. Some stores where I'm from put up those plastic benches for priority lanes. Also, he means people with disability. Nothing could ruin a camping trip faster and more assiduously than crunchy noodles. Good job, OP. Punkin Lux commented, I had an ex who got ticked off, don't ask, at some rude lady with her shopping cart filled with Christmas clearance items. So when the shopper was distracted on the phone, my ex stole the entire cart and put it into the store's loading dock in the back. Later, we saw the woman speed walking around, completely ticked off, looking for all her merch. Our next story is, mean elderly lady skips the wrong line. So, a few days ago, I was sorting out some taxes at a busy office with 5 different sections, each handling a specific type of tax. The place was packed with people, and by 2 p.m., the waiting line extended all the way outside. It was calm and all till an elderly lady arrived, claiming she had been there since the morning. She was in a hurry to meet a deadline. We all did, by the way, and decided to skip the line. Out of respect, no one spoke up. Then she began throwing insults and pushing her way through the crowd. She bumped into me and positioned herself in front of me, saying that she was behind the person standing in front of me. I chose not to argue, as I was too tired to engage with her. For the next 30 minutes, she continued to nag and complain, saying how young people these days don't respect their elders because they let her wait in the line. No one was willing to sacrifice their place in line for her. By the way, I did just that by letting her stand in front of me. After some time, her papers fell to the ground. It was then when I noticed that she was waiting in the wrong line. I considered telling her, but she deliberately stepped on my foot and pushed me again, claiming that I was invading her personal space. So I kept my mouth shut. We continued to wait for nearly 2 hours until finally, her turn arrived. The employees refused to process her paperwork, insisting that she needed to go to the correct office. By that time, the office she needed to go to was already out of service. She became furious and began yelling at the employees for not doing their jobs properly. Eventually, security guards had to escort her out. In the end, she wasted her entire day waiting in the summer heat and ended up getting a penalty for missing the deadline. Yeah, sometimes you don't even have to do anything in order to enact revenge. Just leave things alone, let it be, and karma will come right up behind her and bust her in the back of the head. Near B2 replied, I think I'd have corrected her just to get rid of her. Then again, I don't think I would have to put up with her if I'm behind the person ahead of you bullcrap to begin with. Our next story is, the door in the garage goes up and down, up and down, up and down. The door in the garage goes up and down all through the town. Well, night. Back when my kids were in middle school, we had a really horrible neighbor whose complaints would take volumes to document. First on his list was how the neighborhood kids made noise while playing football in the muddy vacant lot across from his house, which I suppose was annoying, but was also none of his effing business. We mostly endured his daily tirades, but things came to a head when he started calling the cops on the kids and got them informally trespassed from the property. It was traumatic enough for them to lose their, admittedly not their, but still, only free play area, but getting yelled at by cops just made it awful. Not long after, one of the neighborhood kids found a garage door remote. I used the word found judiciously. One of them figured out that it was for Nasty Neighbor's garage. I assume by riding his bike down the street while clicking the remote. Or maybe he just knew somehow? Plausible deniability abounds. Somehow, my oldest kid ended up being the keeper of the remote. Bad news for the neighbor. My kid should be the poster child for this subreddit. For the next few weeks, he'd open the neighbor's garage at around 2 a.m. every night. That alone would qualify as petty revenge, but what I haven't mentioned yet is that our neighborhood had a raccoon problem, and the neighbor kept his garbage in the garage. Not long after the nightly garage door opening, one of the more intelligent raccoons figured out that they had been given tickets to a veritable smorgasbord. So for a while, we would get daily updates about how much and what type of trash the kids on the school bus saw strewn across the neighbor's driveway, complete with Nasty Neighbor shaking his fist at them as they rode past. Nasty Neighbor tried to sick the cops on us, but I refused to let them speak to my kid. Not that he'd have admitted anything. The kid's a stone-cold criminal who's never broken under pressure. Eventually, Nasty Neighbor either got a new garage door opener or reprogrammed the remotes on the one he had. The remote stopped working, and the fun was over. I'm sure the raccoons are just as disappointed as we are. And yes, I encourage my kids' misbehavior because F nasty neighbors who won't let kids just be kids. Well, it was fun while it lasted, and also, side note about raccoons, they don't just scavenge through garbage, they absolutely make a mess and just strew trash everywhere, so I'll bet that was pretty epic. Sanity Checker replied, I know a guy who had a remote that opened his neighbor's garage. He would wait until his neighbor was leaving the house, watch the door go down, and when it was about halfway down, he'd hit the button and send the door up again. The neighbor tried to close the door, and when it got to the exact same point, the door would go back up. He couldn't leave the house because he couldn't close his garage. The neighbor attacked the frame of his garage with an axe. I assume he thought the door was getting stuck somehow, and he was trying to remove the obstruction so his door could go all the way down. Our next story is, got my revenge after the neighbor beat his wife and made a false police report against me. About 10 years ago now, I lived next door to this real piece of work. Save you the details, but over the course of months, we would hear yelling and screams from the house next door. Not a townhouse, a standalone house, so it was loud. I've called the police more than once on the apparent DV taking place. One day, we got to talking with the wife, and she had bruises on her arm and a gnarly cut on her leg. That was from being put through a glass coffee table. Eventually, she would come spend the night to get away, and I'd patch her up. I was in the military and an EMT in those days and had a trauma bag at home. I also used to open carry a pistol, which was legal there. That'll be important in a minute. She refused to call the police, saying that he was a mortician in town and had a lot of cop friends, that it wouldn't go her way. One day, he got ticked we'd help her out, so he made a false report to the police that I threatened him with my gun. So a sheriff's deputy rang my doorbell one afternoon with a restraining order that was going to compel me to move. Problem was, I sold the gun a month before this supposed event to a cop. My girlfriend at the time was friends with a social worker who was dating said cop. I called him up, cop, and explained what happened. He essentially went over there with picture of my old gun, with a ruler next to it as if it were evidence. He asked the neighbor if this was the gun. The neighbor said yes. He asked the neighbor if that was the correct date, and he said yes. So he serves him with a ticket for making a false report, and the restraining order went away. Next time neighbor sees me outside, he made general threats. Well, I just got my discharge from the Air Force, so I was moving back home to the East Coast. And just before I did, I went to his backyard with a shoot of bamboo that I cut into 4 pieces and a rubber mallet. I randomly drove them all over his backyard. That same week, I also brought his wife to a women's shelter. It basically overtook his backyard. He will never get rid of that bamboo. Piece of crap. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a real piece of work, and filing that false police report absolutely pushed us over the edge. He deserved every bit of backlash he got. Scandia RX commented, reminds me of a call-in gardening show I heard once. Caller asked the professional his recommendation for planting bamboo. The host replied, do you have a license to use nuclear weapons? Because that's the only way you're going to get rid of bamboo. Muffin Rhino replied, now that I'm really thinking about it, I wouldn't be surprised if creeping bamboo could survive a small airburst nuke. Wouldn't be a deep crater or too much soil displacement. Their roots can go about a meter down, and they can regenerate from almost nothing. Edit. I did some digging, and found out a willow tree at the epicenter of Hiroshima survived the nuke there. It was destroyed, but its roots recovered. Our next story is, Neighbor was feeding 12 stray feral cats outside her house, but refused to take responsibility when they were crapping on around the neighborhood. Context: we live in the same building, which has 10 floors. The cat feeder is on the 10th. She's been feeding stray and feral cats over 2 years outside her apartment door, and all other neighbors on different floors have been finding cat poop and pee right outside our doors. All of us collectively tried to talk her to at least keep a litter box or adopt the cats if she loves them so much, but to no avail. We then complained to the management of the building. They warned her, but she continued feeding the cats. The cat poop was always there to greet the residents and their guests, and it stank all over the place. One morning, when I was going to drop my 5-year-old to school, he unknowingly placed his foot on fresh cat poop right outside my door. His white pea shoes were completely soiled. We were getting late, and that's when I decided to take petty revenge. After I came back, I picked the cat poop in a dustpan, climbed 10 stories, because the elevators have cameras, and placed it right outside her door. I did this for a week, consistently, and thankfully the cat poop issue is solved because the cats decided that their toilet is now her door. Yeah, it's never an issue until you yourself have to deal with it. So yeah, just make her deal with the excretions, and yeah, she'll probably change her habits. Button Snap Zipper replied, "We have feral cats in my neighborhood that people feed. My city actually catches feral cats and neuters or spays them, then releases them back where they pick them up. I have zero issue with any of that. My problem is them crapping in my backyard because my idiot little dogs love to eat cat poop. I've had to get them treated for parasites because of it. People have the right to feed stray animals if they like, but I also have a right to let my doggos out in their own fenced backyard without having to worry about them getting sick. What's the solution? None. I can't stop them. Just irritates me." Our next story is, "Don't take your bad mood out on customers." Me and some friends were sitting around a few nights ago, shooting the breeze. Our one friend, let's call him Larry, was telling his latest adventure while trying to buy a new car. If something is going to go wrong, it will happen to him. That's a story for another time. This took place about 25 years ago, just as cell phones were coming onto the market. I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but in those days, you would take a 24-month contract, and that included the phone. Larry decides he wants his first phone and goes to a cell shop to sign up. Once the sales pitch had been completed, he must go and see the sales manager to sign the contract. He walks into the sales manager's office, and the guy behind the desk grunts at him to sign the papers and get out. Larry is taken aback and asks what the problem is. The sales manager says that there are a lot of people wanting phones, and he doesn't have time for everyone. Larry gets the contact and starts to read the contract slowly and line by line. The sales manager tells him to hurry up. Other customers are waiting. Larry looks up from reading and says he had lost his place in the document and needs to start again. Larry starts from the beginning again and has slowed down his reading speed. The manager starts to give him an earful to hurry up. Larry loses his place again and starts from the beginning. This happened another 3 or 4 times, and to quote Larry, you could see the steam coming out of his eats, and he looked like a ripe tomato. Once Larry had been allowed to finish reading the contract, he told the manager that he wanted to make some changes. He did so. This reading, etc., took more than 2.5 hours. Once Larry left with his new phone, he noticed that the store was almost filled to capacity with people wanting to complete the contract process. What Larry really enjoyed about this was the sales manager was still busy with the new customers for almost 3 hours after the shop closed. Larry was walking back to his car and saw a really upset manager. I think it's just natural human nature to resist a little bit when rushed, so yeah, he should have known that this would happen. Bay Area Pup Mom commented, "I'm doubtful that the manager would have allowed him to change anything in the contract. That's not how phone companies worked even in the beginning. Not sure what country this is, but I suspect that all cell phone plans map back to major companies regardless of the country, and third-party sellers didn't have the right to alter terms of the agreement without approval of the parent company. Funny story, though." Our next story is, "A usual degree of pettiness." This story is my mother-in-law's. We'll call her Jane for the sake of this post. My partner is from a respectable working-class family, and my father-in-law's sister married an architect who we'll call John. John and Jane always had what Jane describes as a bit of friendly bants between them, but I gather that he needled her about their jobs and for working for the NHS. When my partner went to university, he made a snobby comment about that university having been a trade school until fairly recently, and rubbed in the universities that his children got accepted to and the degrees they were doing. Now it's 20 years later, and my partner is the only one of the kids that's actually using their degree, incidentally at the NHS. Every time Jane speaks to John, she asks after his kids and then gently rubs in my partner's degree and achievements. Unfortunately for John, my partner is living the "I accidentally made myself important at work and now it's ruining my life" meme, and there are a lot of achievements to rub in. A degree is just a piece of paper, man. I mean, I have a PhD for crying out loud, and here I am reading stories on Reddit for people's entertainment, so no sense in gloating in that, right? CT Wargamer commented, "Years ago, I worked at an ISP startup. We used to joke about how we could start a small university with all the different qualifications we had, that we weren't using. Everything from art to classical history, through to quantity surveying qualifications. Anytime someone new came in, we had to find out their qualification and add it to the board we kept in the break room. It was fun." Nuggy Nugget replied, "This was so much the norm back in the 1980s. There was so much software to be written, and the fact that there were comp sci degrees was such a new thing. Also, some of the comp sci degrees were very specific. Like, some schools were known for cranking out mainframe, COBOL programmers, etc. My first boss at my first professional comp sci job was a PhD in psychology who learned how to program to do animal behavior work, like shock the monkey when it did something you didn't want it to do, give it a treat when it did something you wanted it to do. It kinda helped that he had a genius IQ. Same was true all throughout the 80s. Worked with some people who had degrees in biology, chemistry, etc. All you needed was some sort of degree and an aptitude for coding. My degree was in electrical engineering, but I decided comp sci was more fun, and ended up doing it for a long and rewarding career. Our next story is, Not All Heroes Wear Capes. Here's the scene. 2 lanes of traffic. Right lane is merging in at some point down the way due to construction. I'm already in the left lane, so I stay put. I live in a place where people don't really get the thing of filling both lanes to the merge point and then doing the zipper merge. It's dumb, but it's born of people's kindness and a lack of assertiveness. So, in short order, the right lane empties out, primed for the a-holes who don't understand the culture here to barrel down the right lane to the merge point, jumping the line and effectively causing all of us in the left lane to stop to a crawl. Now, I don't blame them because this is what I would like to do, but I'm not going to because it would make me the a-hole. Enter my hero, the jacked up Ford F-150 in front of me who sort of drifted a bit into the right lane to see how far the merge point is. I assume he's sizing up whether or not to join the a-holes and cut the line. What happens next is so petty and so brilliant. He does not barrel down to the merge point. No, he simply sits far enough into the right lane to block all future a-holes from flying past us and jumping the line. I caught his smirk in the side view mirror as he watched the right lane fill up behind him, and eventually start merging where they were. I gave him a thumbs up from over my steering wheel as we passed through the short construction zone. He waved back. Edit. The amount of vitriol from the rule followers is hilarious. I'm sorry to those who got downvoted simply because, like me, they see that sometimes adapting to the world around you makes life easier. I don't have to agree with the way things are done, but if 70% or more of the people here decide that's the way to handle it, who am I to argue or be the rule police? Zipper merging is not a law here, but safe driving when entering an obstructed area is enforceable, and the people driving 50 plus miles an hour down the empty lane are not being safe. Sadly, traffic enforcement is relatively non-existent here as well. For those of you who decided that my statements about cultural driving behavior were incredulous, I encourage you to leave your home and go out into the world in a car. From city to city, every place drives differently. And for all who appreciate amazing drivers that follow all the rules of the road, I invite you to visit and drive in the country of Germany. I've never felt safer behind the wheel because every person knows exactly how to behave, and when everyone agrees to the rules and follows them, there are no surprises. Peace. Yeah, I'm not going to weigh in too much on this because people are just so sensitive on both sides of the argument, and it really just stems from entitlement. So, it is what it is. You're either going to be a rule follower or you're going to be one of the described jerks in this video. It just is what it is. BBH Ray replied, "That's really silly, and non-zipper merging causes way more traffic. These people aren't a-holes. Most of the time, the lane that isn't going to close gets so backed up way before it needs to, most people won't even see a lane closure sign right away. If the lane is open, people will use it. They're not jerks for learning how to navigate traffic correctly. You too could be an a-hole if you wanted. It's not cutting if anyone could get out of the line they decided to sit in way longer than needed. Being from New York and moving to the South, I will never understand why they cause more traffic for themselves and longer wait times. Dear Elk3396 replied, "Agreed. It's so misguided to have signs and road stripes informing the public precisely where highway engineers determined is the optimal point to merge, only to have drivers say, nope, we're all going to merge back here instead, and anyone who follows those arrows is an a-hole. And any vigilante who blocks the merge lane is a hero. It baffles me." Our next story is, he cheated, blamed me, and said we need to spice up our hooked up life. Chili in his underwear should fix that. I was in a monogamous 2-year relationship. We were living together, and there were seemingly no issues. There were times when he would need to leave the house to see friends or go to jujitsu. Now, looking in hindsight, the jujitsu excuse was quite ironic. But I would never question it because I trusted him. One day, I received a message from a random girl reaching out to me and asking if a certain guy was my boyfriend. And what do I see? Screenshots of my boyfriend sexting with her. Turns out, this girl also thought she was having a monogamous relationship with my boyfriend for the past 3 months. I confronted him about it the same day, and his reaction was mind-boggling. He started to explain his actions like he was the victim, and he had the audacity to hint that the problem was with me and our hooked-up life was lacking something. I was gobsmacked. We were still being intimate almost every day, and I basically did whatever he wanted in the bedroom. I guess it wasn't enough for him. During his mental gymnastics, he let out a phrase. We just need to spice things up in our relationship. Oh, I see. You need some more spice? Well, I have an idea. The same night, while he was asleep, I took chili powder and rubbed it in all of his underwear with love and care, making sure I rubbed it in both sides, the front and the back. The next morning, my plan was simple. Watch how he likes his new chilly underwear and leave. I woke up before him and finished packing my stuff. He woke up a little late and had to hurry to not be late for work. He got dressed and made himself a quick coffee with a sandwich. As the coffee was brewing, I started to hear unpleasant moans from the kitchen. The moans turned into loud, "What's?" as he awkwardly ran back to the bathroom with his jeans and underwear down to his knees. The confusion on his face was exquisite. I smirked and left his place with a couple of suitcases without saying anything. I went back a couple more times during the day to take the rest of my stuff while he was at work. That evening, when I was already staying at my friend's place, I received a message from him. "Did you do something to my underwear?" To which I replied, "I spice things up." Yes, I love it, Queen. Go get this cheating scumbag. Spiced it up. Beautiful. Our next story is, got an unknown caller and decided to get weird. The caller starts in with a sales pitch about do we need any home repairs because they're going to be in the neighborhood and want to save us a fortune. I put in my stress to the max voice and cried out, "My house burned down last night. My dogs died. My wife and I are stuck in a Red Cross shelter right now. What is wrong with you people?" My wife was sitting next to me and nearly choked as I answered the call on speakerphone. She could hear it all. She was well acquainted with my seriously messed up sense of humor. The caller, a guy, was left speechless for several moments before he very quietly said, "I hope things work out for you." Then he hung up. My wife doubled up with insane laughter, and I began to fear that I might have traumatized the poor guy. Oh well, my phone didn't ring for the rest of the evening. With the frequency that these calls come in, every now and then you gotta have a little bit of fun. No harm, no foul. I love it. Liz Truth commented, "My husband and I take turns being the cheated on spouse. Honey, it's that woman again. What is wrong with you? You promised." My favorite was a cold call for health insurance, where I made up grosser and grosser symptoms of a genital rash to find out if it would be covered. What about STD medications? Our next story is, finally return the favor to my idiot brother. Many years ago, before I was married, my little brother gave my phone number to some random girl while on a high school trip from St. Louis to KC. This girl called me repeatedly one night while I was having dinner with my then girlfriend, claiming she was my little Italian princess. Fast forward several years. The idiot is now on his third marriage, presumably because he's a massive narcissist. Now he's got a kid, and our mom shared his social media post to celebrate the birth of her 6th grandchild and 2nd grandson. He lit her up. claimed that she didn't have his permission to share it, then went into a 3-screen-long diatribe about how she, my sister, and myself are the reason he's been in therapy for the last 10 years, which is amusing because I cut all contact 5 years ago and barely even wanted to associate with him for 10 years before that. But I digress. I recently handed over his number to a friend that's in construction with the guidance to give it to all his construction friends and send him pics of their craps from their job site porta-crappers. I've also started carrying a permanent marker in my truck so I can leave his number behind in any sketchy gas station bathroom or porta-crapper I can find with the simple note, "I want to see your crap. Text it to me at blah, blah, blah." It's just crazy to me that people actually do fetish over these kinds of things. Like lumps of turd in a porta-john? Yeah, yikes. Known Skin 3639 replied, "As a joke to pay back one he played on me, I did something along those lines. He can't handle blood, period. The sight makes him gag and puke as if he had a stomach virus. So I text him a pic of used tampons. Had many girls I knew put his number on the inside of restroom doors. His joke stopped, but there's nothing I can do about his number still in the stalls at God only knows how many public restrooms. But until he changes his number, he either has to stop opening the messages, to which he cannot as he's a contractor hungry for work, or change his number altogether, but that's difficult as all his repeat customers and companies need to be notified, and as busy as he is lazy AF about stuff like that. The gift keeps on giving. It's been 7 years this August. Sorry, not sorry. But watching him open a text and finding a used tampon pic is pure entertainment. Thing is, it could be the works of any one of his friends. Practical jokes can backfire, as this one has. Cruel? Maybe. Funny? Oh, heck yes. Our next story is, tried to help someone who parked illegally. He yells at me. Pettiness ensues. I was attending a Canada Day celebration with my 7-year-old son in a small cottage/lake town. The parking situation was terrible for several blocks around, but we got there early and parked very close in some marked diagonal street parking spots. I noticed what seemed to be an extra large parking space 2 spots over and was tempted to park there, but I realized it was actually a driveway and there was no curb there, and there was a no parking sign against the building a little distance away. We were leaving around mid-afternoon when kid activities were ending and grown-up activities were starting to ramp up. As we got in the truck, I noticed someone pulling into the no parking spot I saw earlier. He got out and started walking away. I called out to him and told him it was not a parking spot and he'd probably get ticketed or towed. Before I could continue talking and offering my spot to him, he just looked at me with anger and yelled, "Why is it any of your effing business?" With my son in the truck, I was especially ticked at him. I told him I was just letting him know since I was leaving and he could have my spot. He stopped and said, "Oh, okay, thanks," but I was already feeling petty. I just said, "Maybe I changed my mind and I'll just sit here for a while." He said, "Do whatever the F you want," and went back to his car. I made sure my son was entertained on my phone, and I just sat there as me and the jerk stared at each other in a Mexican standoff. After 5 minutes of me smiling at him, he got ticked and pulled out. As soon as it looked like he was turning around to come to my spot, I pulled out when another driver came from the other direction and made sure the new driver pulled in. I waved at the jerk and drove away very happily. Yeah, I don't understand why people get so angry and defensive when they're called out for doing something inappropriate or against the rules or regulations. It's like you have to know that where you're parking is not a legal spot, so don't be mad when you get called out on that. Quant666 replied, "I once suggested to someone that they didn't park in a private car park with clear signage, especially across 2 bays as the ticket guy would be there soon. I was told to F off, you busy C-word, and that car park 1 minute away was closed. One other car park less than a minute away and one less than 2 minutes away, plus street parking available. Where else should they park? They can park there if they want, etc., etc." After they left, the ticket guy very happily gave them an 80-pound lesson in manners, for the person that warned them was in fact the ticket guy. Our next story is, "My boss was a jerk, so I quit without notice." What the title says. 1 full year of racism and discrimination from them. I was one of the top employees and one of the most underpaid as well. Anytime I made even a slight mistake, I got an email and written warning. Of course, she didn't fire me because my role was too important. I got a new job, and once I got the offer letter, I quit without notice. I gave a 5-hour notice to be exact. I helped with my transition a little, but left the same day. After I left, 2 employees left within 3 months. It's almost a year, and they're still looking for replacements. Congratulations, my dear ex-boss. You failed. Now, when you treat employees like crap, you should not think that they owe you anything upon their inevitable departure. So good for you, standing your ground. Elderberry Master 4694 replied, I've quit on the spot twice. Last time was with an elderly boss with serious anger issues, but he never came at me until once. Along came a job that I was not qualified to do. I told him this in person in writing, but he insisted. I asked for help and eventually got someone who didn't really know either. Of course, we didn't win the project. My price was completely off. He completely lost it. Throwing office supplies, spittle coming from his cheeks, I calmly turned around and walked out. I went in the next day and told him I was done, that he could lay me off and send me home with a letter of recommendation in my hand. He apologized and said he didn't remember what happened. I feel sorry for the old guy. Our next story is, my ex-BF of 2 years asked for his bracelet back after we broke up, but I sent him a video of me cutting it up and throwing it away. My ex-boyfriend, Chase, and I dated for 2 years, and I broke up over a year ago for many different reasons that I won't get into in this post. But for a bit of background, Chase had never gotten me a gift for anything. Birthdays, Valentine's Day, Christmas, you name it. While I don't expect gifts all the time, gift giving is one of my love languages. I spent hundreds, maybe even thousands on him for the duration of our relationship, even when I had on and off jobs and not a very consistent income. Anyway, he was homeschooled, but I invited him to my school senior prom. I paid for both of our tickets, which were $75, by the way, but he gave me a gift for the first time. It was a blue beaded bracelet that had specks that glowed in the dark. He gave it to me before prom. Fast forward about 4 months later, I broke up with him. A few days after we broke up, he sent me an angry text explaining how he wanted me to ship back the bracelet that he gave me before prom. At first, I said I would out of fear because he had explicit photos of me that he threatened to post if I did not send it back. But then I decided that this man was just being petty and I wasn't going to give it back to him. I told him that he could freak off and he wasn't getting his dang bracelet back. I brought up how I had gifted him many things that I did not expect him to send back, and that only made him more angry. He continued to threaten me about posting said photos, so I recorded a photo of myself cutting the bracelet apart and tossing it in the trash. I followed up the video telling him to leave me alone. He realized that I knew he wouldn't actually post them because he's a scared little bench, so he apologized and I blocked him on everything. Nothing too crazy, I just thought it would be a good thing to post here. Yeah, attempting to extort somebody through these kinds of means is totally unacceptable. I'm so glad, OP, that you called his bluff. You're right, he is a cowardly little girl at heart. Bay Area Pup Mom commented, I hope you learned your lesson not to ever take or send compromising pictures of yourself to anybody. Even if someone doesn't threaten you with them, they can fall into the wrong hands inadvertently. Social media is not your friend. Also, there's no need to spend so much money on gifts for someone you care about. If gift giving is your love language, there are cheap, meaningful things you can give as gifts. My husband and I do this all the time. You don't need to buy people's love if they truly care for you. You should be investing your money instead for college or retirement. And OP replied to this, I have 100% learned my lesson. I was insanely manipulated in this relationship, not trying to put the entire blame on that, and it was my first serious relationship, so I did not know what was considered normal. But I know now that you don't need to buy expensive things to show you love them, and I should not have let him pressure me into sending those kinds of photos. Our next story is, I've been your donkey for months. Now you're going to drag that stuff. When you come from the south of Europe and you have a good degree, usually you're still pretty much screwed economically speaking. For this reason, I moved to a northern country, sacrificing job offers, relationships, even being with my ill mother, just for a paid internship supposed to be an entry position. Well, the only thing I learned is that crappy people are all over. The company itself is okay, people in the office are cool, the job is nice. But my district manager is an old, misanthropic Dutch hag that everyone hates, but is encrusted in her position since over 20 years. She also has an assistant, this 40-year-old Ukrainian coming from a very rich family that managed to pass as a refugee for getting money and housing from the state. Anyway, I try my best, being correct, work my butt off, always trying to improve, just to be constantly scolded and demeaned. At the point that I started to do what they want to without questioning, even that wasn't enough. More times that pass, the more time they were mobbing me in the crappy activities in isolation. Something that gladly admitted in a meeting, making the upper levels pretty upset. Long story short, they're probably letting me go. Internship, no protection. But at least I've got a satisfaction. Seeing the old hag dragging under the sun a big pile of cardboard, not counting on me anymore to do the heavy job. And something that now is waiting for them all summer. And P.S. I deactivated all the electronic tools, and it will take them a while to take them back on. Enjoy some physical labor, female dogs. Yeah, this is a great way to get back. You may have lost your internship, but they are going to miss you in more ways than you think when they have to lug all that stuff around in the hot sun. Dak Deweyf replied, "Heck is other people, and unfortunately, people are everywhere. I'm sad to read this happen to you after traveling all this way. Good for you for letting her lift her own crap." Our next story is, "You want your crap back? You can quite literally get it off the roof, mother effer." This happened about 10 years ago, but it still makes me laugh every time I think about it. I was in my early 20s, dating this guy who was ridiculously controlling and full of himself. Classic narcissist. Everything revolved around him, and in his mind, he could do no wrong. You know the type. Anyway, after I caught him cheating, I finally hit my limit and told him I was done for good. The way I found out he was cheating was the best part. I had had my suspicions for a while, so I went through his phone. Sure enough, there were months of messages between him and some girl he worked with. Flirty garbage, talking about how he couldn't wait to leave me. All that nonsense. But one text in particular had me rolling my eyes. He had sent her this the day before. "She's driving me crazy. She's got me through the roof. I need you so bad, babe. Got me through the roof." Pretty sure that's not how the expression goes. Your blood pressure can be through the roof, your anxiety, your rage, but unless you're Spider-Man or a haunted Victorian child, you're not going through the dang roof. The next morning, while he was at work, I texted him and said I was done. He kept pressing me to explain, but I never admitted I'd read his messages. I let him stew in his own arrogance until he finally realized I wasn't bluffing. By that point, he had pretty much moved into my house, so naturally, he wanted all his stuff back. He texted me something like, "You better have all my crap outside when I get there, and I mean every freaking bit of it. I'm not making 2 trips. Oh, don't worry, sweetheart." I gathered every last thing he had at my place, which included at least a third of his wardrobe, a pile of overpriced hats, 2 pairs of pristine Jordans, and an iPad. I stuffed everything, minus the iPad, into a trash bag, tied it loosely, walked outside, and launched it straight onto the roof. Some of his clothes flew out mid-air and scattered across the yard. Most of it landed on the roof and just chilled up there like it paid rent. As for the iPad, I put it in a box and set it near the edge of the driveway. Not long after, a couple of teenagers walked by and peeked inside. I was sitting on the porch when one of them asked, "Is this yours?" "Nope." "Can we have it?" "Sure, why not?" He said to put his stuff outside. He never said I had to guard it. About 2 hours later, he pulled up, saw his clothes strewn across the lawn and a trash bag dangling off the roof, and lost it. He started pounding on the door, furious, yelling, "Why the freak are my clothes on the roof?" I swung the door open, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Well, judging by the text you sent your little girlfriend, apparently I had you through the roof. I figured your clothes might as well join you. You told me to put your crap outside. You didn't say where." He stood there, red-faced, fists clenched, seething. "And how the freak am I supposed to get my crap off the roof?" I shrugged, smiled sweetly, and said, "Maybe your girlfriend can loan you a ladder," then slammed the door in his face. The funniest part is that he ended up making 2 trips anyway. He did come back later with a ladder. Whether or not she loaned it to him, I couldn't say. I stayed inside with the door locked and haven't heard much from him since. This is hilarious. I actually love every bout of this petty revenge and just being so strong-willed to get up in this raging dude's face and be like, "Yo, climb the roof and get your crap." Boss move, I'm here for it. Pavika Malik replied, "We witnessed a legendary breakup from our 3rd-floor apartment once. The woman, lead singer in a punk band, was throwing all her boyfriend's clothes out the window into the street. He was wearing only his underwear and was simultaneously scrambling to pull on a pair of pants, gather his clothes, and dodge the occasional car while yelling, 'Babe, I'm so sorry.'" Our next story is, "Tribute to my favorite uncle. My Uncle Buck was a lovely man. Quiet man, but he would take everything in, then provide a devastating reply or observation. He was the GM of a large car dealership, and back in the 70s, the dealership was sued by a used car buyer who decided he had paid too much for a car. Buck had to represent the dealership in court, and Buck was pretty annoyed at wasting half a day going to court. When the plaintiff was being identified to the court, he insisted on being referred to as doctor. His ethnicity is unimportant, but he came from a culture where titles and degrees were valued as symbols of social rank. Buck had served in the Navy in the late 40s, and he insisted that if the plaintiff was going to be recognized by his title, the court had to refer to him by his military rank, Lieutenant Commander, retired. The plaintiff went on with his evidence, and at the end of it, the judge asked him if it was fair to say that at this point, the plaintiff was the world's leading authority on the fair market price of a 1973 Ford Mustang. The doctor beamed and stood up as tall as he could. Neither me nor Buck were big men, and said, "Why, yes." The judge looked at him and said, "It's a shame you didn't achieve this status before you purchased the car and found for the defendant without Buck having to present." Leaving the building, Buck found himself in the elevator with the plaintiff, and before they reached the ground floor, Buck leaned over to the doctor and said, "I knew you were going to lose." The doctor seemed startled, then demanded to know how my uncle knew. Buck replied, "I play golf with the judge," and stepped out of the elevator, leaving the little doctor outraged at the injustice. What Buck said was half true. He did play golf. Yes, and some of the deepest friendships and business partnerships are made on the golf course. Book it! Our next story is, I will sit there until it grows mold. Edit to add. I'm in the UK. Parcels being left with neighbors is very common practice. Original post. This is an ongoing, really petty, maybe, and small revenge. I'm just fed up at this point, so I'm digging my heels in. We live on a small street, and both my fiancé and I work from home, so we've ended up being the default post office on the street. For the most part, it's fine. We're happy to take in parcels for our neighbors. Did decline the mattress because what? And most of them are super nice about it. Thank yous and coming to collect their stuff. All that stuff. What I think is basically neighborly politeness. But we have two houses that just never come to get their stuff. Admittedly, my fiancé is too nice for their own good because they, after a couple days, go round to our neighbors and deliver them. We had another delivery for them this week. Ideally, we should decline it, but our post person is lovely, so we said yes, so they don't have to carry it anymore. But I am done. I've declared, very over the top, I know, that we're not delivering this parcel. I have a space on a dusty shelf in the hallway, and it will sit there until the end of time, or until magically said neighbor actually comes to collect. My bet is on the end of time being sooner. Yeah, if you don't dig your heels in, they're going to continue to take you for granted. So I agree with this move. I do think eventually it will be resolved before the end of time, though. Bay Area Pup Mom replied, "It's literally your post person's job to carry mail back and forth. Not sure why you feel the need to be the doormat for the neighborhood. I suspect if you stopped allowing the perk of receiving people's mail, they would plan better to have it delivered on a day when they're home and or just have it dropped off on their porch. I work from home, and there's no way I'm answering the door multiple times a day to receive mail and packages from couriers on behalf of our neighbors. It's enough to receive our own packages, of which there are plenty already." Random Coffee Thoughts added, "It could be because of porch pirates or because all packages require signatures. That being said, send a text message to the neighbors having packages delivered to your house or required to collect the same day of delivery, or you'll have the postal service pick it up." Our next story is Dad's Friend's Revenge on a Jerk Neighbor. If anyone is familiar with Chicago in the winter, there's this thing called dibs. This is where you clear the snow from the street directly in front of your house and put something in the spot, like a lawn chair, a couch, or anything, to keep someone else from parking in it. This was a particularly heavy snow with an Arctic blast forecast to come in late the evening. My dad's friend cleared the snow in front of the house so his elderly father could park. He was gone just a few minutes to get his dibs item. He returned to find his neighbor had just parked in the spot. He told his neighbor that the spot was for his dad. The neighbor just laughed and said that he didn't have dibs. Later that night, my dad's buddy came out and built a ridge of snow around the car, about a third of the way up the door. Since it was a wet, heavy snow, it packed real well. He packed it up nice and tight and created a dam around the car. He grabbed his hose and filled the area under this neighbor's car. The Arctic blast would take care of the rest. The next morning, he was woken up by the neighbor pounding on his door, screaming about their car. The water had frozen, completely solid under the car, through the wheels, partially up the doors, and into the lower part of the engine. The car was unable to be entered and was completely immobilized. The neighbor called the cops. My dad's friend explained the situation, heard both sides. At the end, the cops told the neighbor that what he did was wrong and he got what he deserved. As much as it was an inconvenience for my dad's friend, that car sat there for the next several months until it thawed out. The neighbor even called several tow companies, but because of the ice, nobody could touch it. Obviously, the neighbor never did that again. Also, for some unknown reason, the neighbor never talked to my dad's friend again. This took place about 40 years ago. Most people weren't so happy back then as they are today. Yeah, thank you for clarifying the time period. In the back of my mind, I'm just thinking there's no way that this happened anytime recently. So yeah, 40 years ago, that definitely checks out. Fluid Air 3151 replied, "My sister put one of her kitchen chairs in the spot and someone stole the chair. A few days later, she was looking for a spot and saw her chair a couple blocks from her apartment, saving a spot for whoever stole it. She stole it back." Our next story is, "Made my coworker eat ground coffee." So, I work in a quite small office with a team of only 8 people. Our kitchen is so small that only one person can stand inside at a time. No fancy equipment, just a microwave and a kettle. This coworker of mine, although not a bad person at heart, can be very annoying at times. He acts like a know-it-all, even though he might not even know what something is. He'll just make up some bullcrap on the spot, and if you try to educate him about a new thing, he'll just dismiss you. So, a few days ago, we got a box of coffee grounds, which I was surprised to see because there was no filter, papers, or French press or similar equipment in the office kitchen to make ground coffee from. I've worked in a cafe before, so I knew that ground coffee cannot be made like instant coffee because it does not completely dissolve in water. But the smell of that coffee was heavenly, so I really wanted to try it out, but couldn't due to the lack of equipment. This guy says, "What's the big deal? Just mix it in water and make it like normal." To which I tried to tell him that's not the same, but like always, he dismissed me. I asked him to smell it, and he too loved the smell, so I said, "You should eat it." He did, just the tiniest amount, and then said it's good. I think he lied. Then I said, "You should make the coffee your way." He took it as a challenge. Put some water in the coffee grounds, stirred for a while, then added some milk. He was still looking pale white. The coffee hadn't brewed at all, but I waited for the look on his face after he took a sip. He tried to pretend it was not bad, but I burst out laughing. Then I attempted to make the coffee using a tea strainer to show him how it could be made, and it somewhat worked. Dude had to eat his own words along with the ground coffee. It was so worth it. Edit. Yes, I've been educated about Turkish coffee and cowboy. My point was that the guy was being smug and ended up drinking something which did not taste good, at least the way he made it. Not that I'm a coffee connoisseur. We ended up laughing about it later, had some good banter, was not that serious. Nice to hear that not only did he eat his humble pie, but he realized that it really wasn't that big of a deal, and you guys were able to cut up and laugh about it later. Happy ending. Love it. Commercial Peach 845 replied, "One time my stepson had a friend sleep over and they put instant coffee into our drip machine to surprise me with breakfast. They were 7. Pretty sure they didn't realize the issue. Thickest cup of joe ever. But I told him it was the zingiest cup I ever had. I may not have slept for a few days." Okay, everybody, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. I got nothing else for you. I will see you all next time.